Good. Okay. Hello and welcome. Good evening, everybody. My name is Landau. It's my honor to be the host to such chushuva guest speakers, Dr. Tully Gross and Rabbi Chaim Rottenstein. And let me do a quick roundtable. What are we going to do today? We're recording this on audio and video. There's a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to go through where Dr. Gross and Chaim went, Tully and Chaim went, prepared a lot of information, a lot of good pointers on navigating financial habits of pre-Yom Tov stress, and they're coming from two different angles. Dr. Gross, and I'll give you soon the bios in a second. After the presentation, we're going to do questions and answers. We are recording this, and we're going to send it out to everybody that's registered. And these are the opinions of individuals and situations. Versteht sich, everybody ask your local Ruv and your local doctor before you make any decisions. This is a friendly conversation, sharing different experiences from Dr. Gross. Dr. Gross, let's do a quick bio on you. Dr. Thomas Gross, Tully Gross, has over 18 years of experience in behavioral health, specializing in anxiety, depression, behavior modification, and anger management. He has developed the TYB, which stands for Tailor Your Behavior method. It's used in Brooklyn schools to help principals, teachers, and families navigate developmental challenges. Dr. Gross holds a doctorate in clinical psychology from Walden University and has trained with leading experts in evidence-based behavioral health therapies, including CBT, DBT, and trauma-focused CBT. He also educates schools and parents on substance abuse, prevention, crisis intervention and prevention, mental health issues, and is a community advocate for our teens and youth. And you can find him at tailoryourbehavior.com, tailoryourbehavior.com. And his phone number is 917-843-4146. Tully is born and raised in Bar Park, not far from my house. Chaim Rottenstein. Chaim is a certified financial coach trained by the Ramsey Solutions with expertise in financial coaching, education, and emergency services. He helps families achieve financial goals through rsk.org, which is the Reb Shaila's Kitchen program, and combining practical strategies with spiritual principles of trust, betuchen, and effort, hishtadlis. Chaim and his wife paid off $50,000 in debt while navigating multiple job losses, family milestones, and major purchases, all in cash. His experiences shape his empathetic coaching approach. He also teaches in high school financial literacy and has nearly 20 years of experience as an educator and as a lifeguard, CPR, financial aid instructor, and EMT. Very nice. And my name is Lou Landau, and I'm the host here, and I'll try to navigate. I'm controlling the PowerPoint presentation, so we move in a direction. We're looking at about an hour and 15 minutes max. And with that, we are going to be in Mechabit. Tully, take it away.
Thank you very much. Lou Landau is also being very modest. He himself is an amazing person. I had the opportunity to meet him recently in person. We spoke many times, but never met in person. Great individual, raised wonderful family. And he himself, I'm sure, has a lot to offer, and we're looking forward. So with that, I'm just going to get at the first slide. Sorry to embarrass you, Lou, but you deserve that introduction. So basically, what is stress? Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, what is stress and what makes something stressful? So a lot of people there is a lot of confusion around that. So I just wanted to give a couple of lines of clarity where it can be defined generally as mental, physical, emotional, and behavioral reactions to any perceived demands or threats. To be clear, what does it mean perceived? Because everybody has a different perception. You could be sitting in traffic and you could be very stressed. The other person could be sitting in traffic and he could be making phone calls, put his car in park, catch up on paperwork, so on and so forth. So perceived is really subjective. It means what stresses me out may not stress you out. What stresses individual A is definitely something different from what stresses out individual B. So that's why we call it situations that have strong demands. And again, it's specific to different individuals. Situations that are imminent, which means things that are happening right away. Decision-making process, you don't have much time, similar to our approaching holidays that are coming up. We don't have that much time. It's ready or not, here it comes. But if you do it in an organized way, it's definitely more successful. Then there's life transitions, moving, marriage, first holiday at home, first Yom Tov at home, any life transition generally, new job, so on and so forth. Also the timing, which means is it something out of what we're normally doing? That's what I mean by timing. Something that normally isn't present in our general schedules could sometimes throw us off, and our timing can cause, or some of that specific timing based on not being in the everyday routine could sometimes throw us off and cause additional stress. Then there's ambiguity, which I hope to tackle with this presentation, which is something I'm hoping to alleviate very much with Chaim. Chaim's going to back me up. He's also an amazing financial coach. We've spoken many times, which means ambiguity, not having a clarity for a direction of where to go and what to spend. And Chaim's going to help us out with that. And issues with prioritizing. So there is a lot of ambiguity about that. Basically, we don't have a plan. That's what ambiguity. We don't have a clear plan. Then there's desirability. There's wants versus needs. Learning to prioritize often helps with this. In other words, some people prioritize wants over needs. Big mistake. It needs to be clarity. Discuss with a spouse, a family member, so on. Then decide together. Then there is controllability. I love this word, which is why I put it in there. It's a big behavior words, which is exactly why I divided it in half. I use this a lot in practice. There is controllability. What do you have the ability to control, and what don't you have? For example, managing within a reasonable framework means as follows. You can control when Yom Tov is coming, when a holiday is coming, but you can't control your behavior around preparing for that. That's how much is your ability and what is the capability to be of that control for controlling whatever it is you can control versus getting a clarity of what you could control. That's the idea versus what you can't. So basically, in short, controllability. Where can you control something and where can't you? You can obviously control something that has a specific timing, but you could take steps to prepare effectively for that holiday or for the coming of that holiday.
Okay, so totally on purpose, I'm learning this with you for the first time. So you're explaining to me a whole bunch of ideas or what is stress, right? What are triggers that cause stress?
Correct.
Right?
Yes, and the next slide actually has a couple of, we're not going to read through all of them, but has a couple of possibilities that are specifically related to potentially being triggers for different people. And again, different people get triggered in different ways. And what may be one or two things on the list for others, for some, there might be more than one or possibly most of these things on the list, which is okay.
Okay, so we're discussing all different kind of triggers that cause stress.
Correct.
Julie?
Yes.
We're discussing different triggers to what cause stress, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, good. Go on.
So again, I don't have to read through this. We're all capable of reading. These are all life phases and stages that we go through. Of course, preparing for a holiday or a different change or any change for that matter can cause stress. And there is a very big difference between unhealthy and healthy stress, which we're going to get to shortly. So any questions on this slide?
No, so again, what you're saying is people should recognize that this is one big word, stress, and it involves so many different categories of how somebody has stress. It has a chasana and a death at the same time.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's buying a house, it's losing a house.
So I'm guessing if people know what's triggering them, if they know what's triggering them, now they know how to avoid the trigger or how to deal with the issue because they know what caused it. Is that what I'm getting? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. And most of these stresses seem to be, well, all stress is mental, but you said before that there is a difference between mental and the physical and emotional and behavioral. So explain, for example, like a physical trigger would cause the mental stress.
That's correct, but it's also something that needs to be clarified here. It's a perception. When we talk about stress, if you look at the universal definition of stress, it's something that is subjective. Anything that you read about stress is going to be subjective.
Right.
Stress,
Everybody based on their capacity, based on their threshold of what stresses them out. And the older we get, the more mature we get, the less things stress us out. So it's like, don't sweat the small stuff.
correct, correct. And a lot of it is also based on background, resilience, your personality, resilience,
Correct.
uh, your
Upbringing, what
exact,
what you
exact,
saw.
and also your ability to respond, your coping mechanisms pretty much fall right into the category of resilience, which means are they pleasant or unpleasant? People who panic. So oftentimes people will ask me, where do you think the anxiety comes from? My son has a lot of anxiety. I often say, well, you show me an anxious child, I'll show you an anxious parent. A lot of these things are learned behaviors. There are some genetic factors as well, but it's basically nature and nurture. It's not, there was a big argument.
Right. And I don't want to jump the gun. And just like it's learnable to become stressful, it is also learnable, teachable to not become stressful.
That's correct. Exactly.
Okay, fine. Next slide. I'm the slide meister.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I'll take it from here. First of all, thank you, Dr. Gross and Laser Lut, for agreeing to do this. I know Dr. Gross almost 20 years. We were good friends, and Mr. Landau, we've met about a year ago and we became very close and created a couple of WhatsApp groups together. We decided this would be an amazing opportunity, the Tailor Sarabim, as they say, before Yom Tov. It's so stressful. There's so much going on with money and financials and with the family dynamics that we should put this together. So thanks both to you for taking the time out of your day, 8 of Yom Tov, taking time out of your business to do this together with me. So
I want to say thank you for arranging. Chaim is behind the whole. You took the initiative on it. It's your idea. You took the initiative, so thank you.
my pleasure. My pleasure. Okay. So
I that out to you as well.
So first of all, we cannot afford financial stress. We know that stress, there's good stress, there's bad stress. This stress is bad, and we can't afford to have financial distress. I recently heard from Mr. Gilbert, who's the founder of RSK.org, an amazing organization that I have the privilege to work for, that Raquel Natsula had told him since COVID, there's been an 18% increase in anxiety and the stress-related calls directly correlated to financial stress. So we can so obviously it affects us physically also. We mentioned before that stress is mental. It does have that connection to physical also. People, I see it. Sometimes people just get paralyzed in their thought process and their behaviors because of financial stress. Research from as recently as 2004 suggested that 50%, 57% of employees are experiencing some financial hardship as a major source of stress. And this obviously affects mental health, sleep, work performance. So for the bosses out there, something to consider. Maybe I know a company that signed up with RSK, and a shout out to them. I'm not going to say names, but it's an amazing thing. And they brought RSK down to talk to them, and they offered it as a perk to their employees to a certain extent. I don't know the details of it, but I know it's been done. So if you're an employee of a business now, and I've told this to bosses, this is an amazing perk you can offer. They come to you for a raise. Who says the raise is going to help them? So offer this as a perk. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and you're going to see a lot better performance out of your employees, and they have the menichas and nefesh, and they could do their job. Okay, so
Wow.
it's even 44% stated that it's an ongoing obstacle in their productivity. And we know that inflation has been, tremendous, and even inflation has come down. There's something called statusflation. Everybody thinks there's inflation going on. Inflation is the speed at the cost of food goes up. Food hasn't gone up in the last couple months. It just hasn't gone down. It came up 3 years ago. It just hasn't gone down. And obviously, income didn't catch up to that. But we still perceive the stress going on. It's our perception. It's not the reality. But because we perceive it as such, it becomes the reality. So again, we cannot afford financial stress, and this is one of the reasons we started the slide. Next.
Awareness. I'll just add, they say that most bias problems come from financial stress, or it's a huge factor. And I would add another little point. A company should consider this as a selfish move to increase their productivity, not only to help their employees, even it happens to be a win-win situation.
Absolutely. And we see it all the time. We see a lot of couples come to us that their shalom bayis improved because they learned how to communicate around money. It carried over to other areas in their married life.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to talking about different healthy habits around spending and unhealthy habits around spending. Compulsive shopping, irresistible urge, living beyond the means, shopping without a plan, that instant gratification, which is something we all suffer from. We used to, we go to Amazon, click, it's there within a couple of hours, there the next day. Doing these type of purchases usually lead to financial distress, not the good type of stress you want to have. So try to limit that. Obsessive invest. I'm sorry.
1 second. This
Sure.
whole slide is about unhealthy habits and
And
extreme spending behaviors.
correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct. So these
Okay.
are different things that could cause the unhealthy habits, unhealthy spending.
As people are listening and looking at the slide, think for yourself, reflect for yourself. Where is an area that you yourself need some tightening of the belt in? And maybe take a pen and paper and make some notes. A kleine Gedankendu or kleine Gedankendort, where you can become a little more smart with your spending and behaviors around spending. For sure, Amazon Prime is not helping anyone except for themselves. It's so fast, so easy. So let's see, what are the other ones, one by one?
So we have obsessive investing. Some people are just literally follow the market. I'm not talking if you sit and work on Wall Street. We're talking about day-to-day people just obsessed. It went up, it went down. Investing should be a long-term game. It should be a goal. I'm investing to marry off my child. You don't have to worry the day-to-day. It's not going to affect your portfolio. It's not going to affect your fund in 15
Next.
years from now when you're marrying your child. Set it once a year. You want to check into it, good, but don't be stuck with it. You should be investing with a plan. Otherwise, it's really gambling. Okay, it's those people that obsess with it, they usually make the biggest mistakes. Financial enabling. This is very common, unfortunately, in our community. We're a community of Rachman, B'nai Rachman. We want to help people, and we think when your chaver comes to you, do me a favor, let me swipe $100,000 on your credit card, and here's the cash, and we're doing them a favor. I'll pay you back in a month from now. We think we're doing them a favor, but we're not. They're just continuing that cycle of debt and continuing that cycle of stress. They're just kicking the ball down the road. They're just kicking it down, and nothing's happening. I'm not saying you shouldn't borrow money. It's a mitzvah in the Torah to borrow money. That's somebody who's before Yom Tov, he's in a tight pinch. His check is not coming in for another 2 weeks because the way the payroll runs, his mortgage is due. We're not talking about somebody who is responsible. It's like a one-time thing. So it's like a macht, it's a geschehen. But somebody consistently comes to you to borrow money because he's constantly short. There's a lot more going on than just him being short on money. Maybe he's obsessively investing, is just spending all his money on investments. Maybe
Right. So
he
I,
does.
I just want to jump in for a second.
Sure.
From the behavioral end, I'm noticing that there is a very concrete difference between the word compulsive and obsessive. So compulsive is actually the behavior. It's the behavior that's driven by irresistible urge, which means they pretty much react without thinking. That's the idea here. They react almost like a knee-jerk reaction, and it has to do specifically with the behavior. And the obsession is more or less like the thoughts. They're driven by the thoughts. They do have some plan of action behind the obsessive thoughts, because by definition, the word obsession is with a thinking. It attacks the thought process of an individual by obsession. What kind of an obsession? You can't just say a person has an obsession, because if he has an obsession, he has obsessive thoughts that lead to a behavior. So there is some sort of, people don't just wake up in the morning and jump into whatever it is you want to fill in the morning. They don't just wake up in the morning and jump into spending money. There is a plan, even if it's a short-term plan or an impulsive plan, but it's a plan nevertheless. That's the planning that is driven by the thrill, specifically with spending. Again, we're connecting. Some people might be thinking about OCD, which could play a factor, but it's a little bit off topic. So we're not going to discuss OCD, but it does come from that because the obsession is what drives the behavior oftentimes. The difference is
I want to ask both of you, both of these things that you mentioned is kind of too high. I think this bring down this whole presentation a little bit for the Amchu mentioned. 99% of us are not into obsessive or compulsive investing. Bring it down to spending and gambling and lotto and impulsive buying, ignoring bills, unrealistic budgeting. Okay.
Correct. So that's why we thank you very much, Lou.
Yeah.
So that's why we wrote over there on the side by the compulsion. It's the behavior of buying items without a plan, because that is a specific behavior that targets something that is a recipe for disaster. Because you're buying things without a plan, you're looking for the instant behavior. I think a scratch-off lottery would be very, very good. Like you go into the store, you have $2 or $3 or $5.
It's also it's a little bit more also. I want this couch. I want it now. I don't want to save up for it, so I'm going to go swipe my credit card on it, and without thinking, how are you going to make the payments? You're struggling as is to make your payments, but I want that couch now, or I want to buy XYZ today. I want to have 7 outfits for Yom Tov. And
I don't care about the consequences.
They don't care about the consequences, correct. They don't look at the big picture. Do you have the money for it to afford it now? A credit card does not mean you
Right.
have the money.
So, okay. So let's finish this slide, because again, we're talking about stress over Yom Tov. So I want to
So this is
come
general,
around to
right? So these are general behaviors that are day to day, including Yom Tov, that could cause stress. Status spending, buying stuff because my neighbor is going to see. I could tell you, your neighbor's credit card got declined.
Yom Tov.
I saw it for Yom Tov. I saw it get declined. I saw it even an hour ago. A guy was in a pizza shop, and his card didn't go through. And he told the guy, "You sure it didn't go through? Maybe you punched in the numbers wrong." You swiped the card. What do you mean punched in the number wrong? It got declined. The card is maxed out.
Right.
Impulsive
So you're
buying,
saying
ignoring bills.
status spending for Yom Tov. We're talking about
Yeah,
Yom Tov, so status spending on
instead of
Yom
buying
Tov,
the
keeping up
Aliyah, you can't think about the Aliyah you can't afford. You want to buy
Aliyah,
Maftayoina, you want to buy the Husin and all these stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Impulsive buying is it's all that ignoring bills. Another very bad thing people don't notice. You cannot ignore a bill, even if you can't afford it. Make a phone call to them. Tell them, hey, I'm going through a hardship. Is there something we could do? Is there a deferment plan? Can we get on a payment plan with credit cards? Hey, I can't afford it. Can we settle? And they're not settle, but can we come up with a payment plan where and a lot of times they'll close your card, or they'll come up with a payment plan at 2% interest versus the 30%, but you can't ignore it. Make that phone call, be proactive, turn it into a full-time job. The point is not to throw stuff under the rug with bills.
Right.
Okay. Then
Right.
unrealistic budgeting. Yeah.
The point with ignoring bills is they're going to cause a lot of stress.
Yeah, down the line. It's going to cause a lot of stress further down the line. It's there. Your body knows it. Your body feels it because it's sitting there, and it comes back
if it's
even
any
worse.
kind of utility, if it's any kind of utility, they're actually going to shut it off, and then it's going to be a lot worse than.
Yeah, it's always a lot worse. It always ends up being a lot worse. Yeah. Right.
Unrealistic
and
budgeting,
unrealistic budgeting, creating a budget that just doesn't work, putting in even if you budget, but putting in too much in a certain category, in a certain expense. I want to have it now. Again, it comes back to the I need it and I need it now. So being unrealistic that no, I don't have the money to buy X, Y, and Z. I know you want to host 30 couples for Simchas Torah. You just don't have the money in your budget to spend so much in the grocery store. So you could put yourself in that, hey, I'm going to spend $2,000 in the grocery for this month, when realistically it only going to cost you $4. All right, because you're hosting a family of 30. You talk a budget.
So in RSK, so Dave Ramsey and RSK teach you to do a budget, and so if for those who don't have a budget, first of all, half the oilam, if not more, don't have a budget.
Correct.
And
so let me just explain what a budget
is.
You're
sneaking in a nice way. You're sneaking in the idea about budgeting by saying unrealistic budgeting is going to cause stress.
Yes, so even if you do live on a budget, but you're not being true with yourself, what you can afford and what you're really going to spend. Because when we teach a budget, it's called a zero-based budget. There's different type of budgets. There's something called 30, 50, 20. The zero-based budget is a very simple budget. You write on top of the paper your income, and you keep on minusing until it gets to zero. So you could, let's say, I'm going to use simple numbers. So let's say you get an income of $100. If you're putting in that you're spending 50 on groceries when your rent is costing you 60, who are you fooling? You're going to be negative because you
Okay.
can't afford $50 for groceries. So that's what unrealistic
Chaim,
budgeting means. So yeah, you created a budget, but it's not
Chaim,
the reality.
Chaim, you guys can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on.
Yes. Next page.
Clinical distress and when to seek help. Dr. Gross, go ahead. Tuli.
Yes, sir. So basically, there are a lot of times that people just they don't get it, or we're not expecting them to read the textbooks and go through the training that we did, and they have a difficult time distinguishing between what is significant or clinically significant stress versus what is distress or clinically significant distress. So the reason why I wrote distress on purpose, because this stress, pretty much think about stress on steroids, is when the anxiety is really impeding on your everyday function. You're constantly thinking about what it is that you're going to do. If you're, for example, Chaim just left off with unrealistic budgeting. So most people who do have that unrealistic budgeting and they keep falling for a trap and not knowing what to do, they're under a constant distress of anxiety. So that could have a clinical component. A lot of people think that spending or impulsive or compulsive spending, which means spending without a plan or spending with little thought, it's just an everyday habit or something that just happens, and I just live from one paycheck to another, and it's totally okay, and it's not okay. It could very much have a clinical component to it. There's personality disorder. There are clinical anxiety and depression, a void that some people might have that they want to fill in order to have this financial spending, that they need that to feel good because they're missing other things around or other things in their life specifically, or the way they were brought up. This is the way their parents embedded something like this in them because they themselves were missing something, and it was somebody's way of showing them around this type of behavior, and it becomes taught and it becomes given over. So there very well could be a clinical component, and
So,
there is.
Dr. Gross,
Sorry.
please explain for a second. What do you mean? What's the significance when you say that it's a clinical component?
Good
What does
question.
that mean?
Thank you for that. So a clinical component means when you actually have to seek help. So there is stress. I'll give you a clear example. Your first day at school. So you're going to have palpitations. Maybe the famous saying is butterflies in your stomach. And the facts are is that the common denominator of all of this is the discomfort. We have stress that is subjective, that was related. Let's substitute the word subjective to related to the environment that I'm in now. If the discomfort that I'm experiencing, which is why I'm having the consequence of butterflies in my stomach, heart palpitations, because I'm going into this new environment. So it's
Right. So it's situational.
correct. And that's just one example that is clear that happens to be a not clinical. Why? Because it subsides over time and it usually doesn't come back. If you're going to tell me it comes back every year, the first day of the school year, great, that's normal as well. Any new environment, anytime you're going into a new business meeting, all of this is normal. And I hate to break it to you, but this is a healthy companion of stress, even though it's an unwanted, but it is a necessary companion. Because without that stress, you're not going to be motivated to do well on the test. You're not going to be motivated to go to school. You're not going to be motivated to go to the job interviews. Sometimes this type of stress will actually be the deal maker or the deal breaker for us to get
Right.
our necessary or much needed destination.
Okay.
But if you start to have a loss of interest in activities that you previously enjoyed, withdrawal, which means you no longer want to do the activities you liked, and you take that step back, which is even deeper, and you start closing yourself out of in pretty much society, stop socializing with people. Sometimes this plays out where people can get very angry or irritable because they're very easily triggered with anything. So a lot of people, and that also translates into a low frustration tolerance because I get easily frustrated. Anything you're going to say to me, you catch me off guard. I'll be like, what do you want? Leave me alone. What is it that you want now? I just want to be left alone. And it all points back to the idea of I just want to be isolated. I want to be withdrawn. And it goes back to, it could also go back to some habits that you were never taught to deal with, or feelings or situations that somebody was never taught to deal with. And this plays out a lot with unhealthy adults. There are some really immature adults out there as well. And this is how it plays out. You can have developmental slips of old behaviors like temper tantrums or ongoing rebellious behaviors, which can often, at times, if it wasn't taught how to be regulated, show up in adulthood. The only difference is that adults can hide it better. That's the only difference.
Got it.
There's an amazing line that Rachel Cruz, author, bestseller, she always uses: more is caught than taught. Kids pick up a lot more what they see than what they're being told. And I'm guessing it's true with behaviors also. Like they see how parents react around stress, they start emulating that as well.
Correct. I always tell parents, I try to keep it short. I had a professor who said KISS, keep it simple, stupid, or keep it simple, smart, whichever way you want to read it is fine. But it's a great mnemonic. And with that, I say monkey see, monkey do. Whatever you see at home, a lot of times you can often see the personality in the parents just by looking or getting to know the children. And it's interesting what some children will sometimes do in the passing and what we observe. Obviously, we're not going to tap every parent that we see on the shoulder to say, hey, this is interesting that you did that. But we keep it to ourselves. But it does display, and anybody who's in chinuch, who has a little bit of an understanding of how children react and how children act, there is a piece of that, of all of that in their parents.
We see it with personal finance also, spending behaviors and anxieties around money. When we delve into a family's history, financial history, usually we can see it, the parents were the same way to a certain extent.
Correct.
Yeah.
So first of all, nice graphics, Doctor. And let me ask you, so what are you saying? Any of these things indicate that there's a clinical aspect of it already? In other words, if somebody's just having stress because of Yom Tov, because they have to cook and bake and clean for 50, 100 seeders, that's okay. That's not clinical distress.
This is normal, but there's also, you have to be realistic. So if you need help or you need an extra pair of hands or you have to hire more staff, I always like to use the words divide and conquer, which is also on a later slide for a different reason, but it's the same point, where try to get as many family members to help you as possible. It's like this, it doesn't default on the mother and the father, or if you're a single
so I hope you have a slide on how to get your teenage children to help you out at the house, right?
Right, that's correct.
All right, so we go to the next slide. Why would anyone act this way? And coping strategies. Okay, how do they act?
So they act with anger or a lack of frustration tolerance, or they feel a lot of discomfort. So one of the things that we do a lot of times, Yom Tov is spent, by people's houses. They go to parents, they go to in-laws, and now all of a sudden they had this thing going on as a child, and now they just jump back in. And it kind of sometimes can trigger them all over again. So if they felt guilty, if they found ways of preparing and celebrating Yom Tov difficult, they don't want to tell this to their parents. So they feel looked down upon or disrespecting their family. So for example, let me say something clear here. So if, let's say, people have a difficult time preparing for Yom Tov, so they won't communicate because now they're in their parents' house or they're by their in-laws' house, and they don't want to have that shame or guilt that they're going to ask for help, so they won't ask for help. So that's a coping strategy, or should I say a lack thereof, because they're not successfully coping. All you got to do is ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help. A lot of people, they say, look, asking for help is
means that I'm not as smart enough, I'm not a good enough person, so
right, becomes self-defeating. Correct. So all of these things, when people start to contemplate asking for help, so they have this funny feeling. What I don't realize is that even college students, college graduates, colleagues, with anybody who's a college graduate, we all know this, that we pick our brains of colleagues all the time. We consult, we ask. I know just from communicating with Chaim all through while we were preparing for this presentation, we bounced ideas off each other and it became natural to us. And he started to tell me things like, oh, this is more clinical, you should speak about this. And I said, this is more financial, this is more up your alley. And we sort of exchanged very clear notes. We asked each other for help. What do you think? What do you think? So it's just complementary. And in the end, this was the product, which is, I think Chaim really did an amazing job with the finances. I think I even gave him a compliment. I think he even touched upon some clinical ideas, which all I had to do was modify them instead of putting them in there to begin with. But it's really good. big shout out to you, Chaim, for that.
Thank you. Thank you. People don't know that part of coaching is understanding the behaviors. It's not just do X, Y, and Z. It's understanding, okay, why did we behave like this till now? Dr. John Deloney, a very famous crisis interventionist, double PhD, he always says financial stress, financial problems are usually the result of something else.
That's correct.
Yeah, so in financial coaching, as in any form of coaching, there's a lot of understanding the behaviors, what triggered it, what caused it, where is it coming from, what's holding you back, what's not allowing you to move forward. So we're not,
Right.
I'm not a,
So,
I'm not a psychologist, but we do have to understand some of those, backgrounds of a
right.
person's
You have to
thoughts.
know, the enemy. If you're going to conquer the enemy,
Right,
you have to know it.
right.
That's
So,
correct. Reflecting on what Chaim said actually very clearly is that spending money or compulsive or impulsive spending, like we mentioned earlier, does have a clear clinical component, which means there's a void of what the person, similar to what I said before, of what the person is missing. So there is more of an underlying root cause to that, and also we could directly align that with their spending patterns. What are they? Are they normal? Are they abnormal? So this is another way that it translates into coping strategies, because we get to decide, is it a healthy coping strategy or is it an unhealthy coping strategy? So like we mentioned earlier, withdrawal, going into your own little world and ignoring activities we once enjoyed. If you're going to do that, that's an unhealthy coping strategy and the person needs help. And sometimes that can also be triggered temporarily by moving into an environment that you were, by feeling uncomfortable like you were feeling in the past. And there is a remedy for that. I just put that right in there where it says coping skills, because if you're in that, you could actually have the power now as an adult. You could honor something. You could honor the past by bringing something to light or doing something collaborative as a family. The opportunity, the fact that people are going to be there together for Yom Tov, the achdas, the togetherness, it brings out such a beautiful thing if you guys can kind of all get together and make something beautiful. It could be a family picture, it could be a family outing, it could be anything just reminiscing with the siblings together at the table, and you can actually make it into a positive memory by having healthier corrective experiences is actually what repairs the past. That is the idea here.
so if I hear you straight, what you're saying is, why are people doing what they're doing, reflecting to the previous two slides? It started out by saying all the different unhealthy habits, extreme spending behaviors like impulsive shopping, status spending, gambling, and bichlal gambling. I'm not even on investing again, impulsive buying, ignoring bills, unrealistic budgeting. These are all the actual unhealthy habits. What this causes is situational stress, but also clinical stress. Not in the guy for me at the moment, which kind of stress it is. The bottom line is it creates anxiety, loss of interest in activities, withdrawal, I would say depression, hopelessness, helplessness, anger, frustration, reverting back to, in panic mode, people would revert back to old behaviors. All of this is like automatic processes based on the stress that they're getting from all the different things we said before, okay? I'm sort of recapping what we're saying here. And why would they do this? So you're continuing again in the psychological journey of explaining. We're still in the background. We haven't actually touched on tools, how to actually do better spending in Yom Tov. We're still in the psychological journey of stress bichlal.
The
So far,
awareness.
reference to Yom Tov bichlal. And so there's a couple of reasons. There's guilt, there's fear, there's fear, all kinds of fears, whatever. There's uncomfort and coping skills. You're saying bichlal, what could be coping skills for this kind of stress is whatever these two tools that you're saying until now.
Right. There's more later, but I just wanted to. I felt like we're spending so much time on background information.
Fine. I'm recapping, so I have an understanding what we're discussing here. Okay. I need more. I'm nowhere yet. Okay. Not all stress is bad. Stress versus distress. Make it please a very layman version. Please don't give me the doctor version. Give me the layman version.
Layman version is that somebody who's experiencing distress is pretty much, think about stress on steroids. It's stopping you from functioning. You can't manage. You feel overwhelmed and you fall behind in responsibilities. And it's very difficult for you to catch up. And it's a constant repeat of this negative, destructive cycle where you just can't get out of. That
When
is,
people say they get paralyzed by, that they freeze up, would that be a good example of distress?
that's correct. Yes, there is. You actually hit it on mark. There's something called the fight, flight, or freeze
Mhm.
response, and this definitely leads people in that direction. So a lot of times when I train some interns, I train and I speak to them about training on trauma, and usually these are the three components that I discuss with them. But it's not really for this, which is why I deliberately didn't discuss it in this type of PowerPoint.
Okay. Okay, so that's distress. What's the other one?
So then there's positive stress. I touched upon this a little bit earlier, and this is something that will benefit you. Anything that you feel challenged. So challenged to prepare for a good interview. Excuse me. Challenge to pass a test. Challenge to to push yourself to get motivation based on meeting a goal or a demand that is obviously healthy in nature.
Okay, so what you're saying is that if a person could be self-aware and conscientious of what kind of discomfort or whatever, if it's a positive stress or a negative stress, that alone could help them by knowing, no, I'm okay. This is normal. This kind of stress is normal. Cooking for 50 people for 50 meals is normal, whatever. But then they feel that they have much, if they have distress because it's much more, it's ongoing, it's causing them to be uncontrolled panic or uncontrollable. In that case, it's the negative stress, and they should know that they need to seek help.
The key here is that's a negative cycle that they can't get out of alone, and they really need to seek help. So they have an objective or somebody that's an outsider to give them an opinion.
Understood.
At this point, it's really a professional, somebody that's
understood. So good. Next. And it's the awareness of this alone could help someone be. I always say this to people when like teenagers, you're on track. This is exactly how a teenager behaves. You're on track. Just if anybody. So just that to know, even regardless what you're going through, it's 100% normal in whatever situation. You're a new job or whatever. Is that it's normal. You're okay. Oh, I'm okay. Oh, that alone is a bracha, sort of.
That's correct.
Okay. 3 target behaviors for healthy financial management. Okay, let's hear it.
So I always tell people there's 3 things we could do with money. And if we understand what we could do with money, no matter which stage in life you're in, and also with kids, I use the same thing with my kids for this. I teach them what to do. When they get paid, they get birthday gifts, or they get Hanukkah money, or stuff like this. I teach them there's 3 things that you could do with money. First thing is, most obvious, is enjoy your money. Buy your groceries, buy your toys, buy your cupcake in the store. Enjoy your money. If you're going to spend all your money on enjoyment, later in life, you're not going to be able to enjoy it because certain stuff in life costs us more. So if you're going to be focused on the enjoyment, on the immediate gratification, you're never going to have money to enjoy. So this is why there's another thing we could do with money, which is save. We save for long-term and short-term goals. Short-term, we might save it on a savings account. Like, for example, think about your emergency fund, a vacation, your car needs maintenance, right? The stuff like that, short-term savings. And then there's long-term savings, down payment for a house, retirement, a mitzvah. You find out you're pregnant, you're expecting babies, saving up for the kiddush or for the vachtnach, whatever it's going to be, it's going to cost money. So saving for short-term and even long-term goals. Now, the third thing is we're Yidden, and studies show, every single study shows that when you're a giver, you automatically increase your wealth. Dr. Daniel Lapham, Rabbi Daniel Lapham wrote a whole book why Yidden are proportionately wealthier than the Goyim. And one of his main things he writes, because Yidden give tzedakah, right over the top. First thing we do, maser. And he explains what happens is it's not even a spiritual thing, it's a psychological thing. It just changes your being. Instead of being a taker, a Nemstein, you give, and cause you want to give, you automatically do stuff to make more money to be able to give. One of the hardest things for me as a coach is to tell people sometimes you're giving too much tzedakah. you can't afford to give so much. It's difficult because
Mikam
as
Chesro.
Mikam Chisro, it's in our DNA. So these are the three things we do for people. And again, if you save and enjoy your money wisely, later in life you'll be able to give a lot more as well. So this is why I teach people and I tell people that these are the three things we could do with money, and you have to do it equally. If you spend a
Okay.
lot, you have to save as much, and you have to give, proportionately just as much.
Okay. How is this relating to stress for Yom Tov, financial stress in Yom
So
Tov?
this is just teaching you b'chlal about money. So moving forward, so now obviously we're close to Yom Tov. There's not much more we could do, right, in terms of saving, but no, Pesach is in 6 months or 7 months out. Let's start thinking
Mm.
about, I'll talk about this a little bit more later,
Saving
but
from
start
every,
thinking about it. Yeah, start thinking about it. Or
I
even
see,
even
saving
that,
from every paycheck towards Pesach, doing a budget and
doing a
saving
budget.
for
Yeah,
Pesach. Maybe
even
avoid.
now, Yom Tov is in
Got it.
Sikkos is in 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Start maybe putting away some money now to have for Sikkos, for your Esedig. Start planning for your Lulav and Esedig. Okay, maybe your shul seats is too late to save, but your Lulav and Esedig. Every year Sikkos, you always need to add some Noisika to your Sikkah. Start thinking about it. All these
Okay.
are, yeah.
That's all good.
Now's the time also.
Oh,
Now we give tzedukah. Maybe
Uh,
you can't give so much tzedukah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, healthy
Healthy
habits.
habits around spending behavior. Okay.
So before we mentioned some that were
Go ahead.
unhealthy
Whose slide is
habits,
this?
this is me. I'm gonna focus on this, and Dr. Gross is
Right.
gonna add in the clinical aspects where needed.
Do
Um,
me one favor. Do me one favor. Chaim,
yeah,
because of timing, skip anything about investments.
yeah, no
We
worries,
have
no
to stick
worries.
to Yom Tov now. Spending
Yeah.
Yom Tov.
So
Go ahead.
healthy habits, b'chalal, giving tzedakah. Like I said, there's tax benefits and also fulfillment. It makes you feel better. You got to plan for major purchases. We just mentioned, saving and planning for big expenses helps keep stability. A lot of people we find they get the instability. They make enough money, just lack of planning causes that, they're not getting a paycheck during the month of Yom Tov because we're not working. On top of the increased costs, reduction in paycheck, if they would have planned in advance, put away money for it, they won't have such issue. Learn about investments. It's a new skin cell. Spend time learning that. Balanced entertainments. We go Chalamoy trips. Balance that between what can I do? I always tell people I'm a lot more into creating memories than creating experiences than creating the moment now. Think about a vacation you could take with your family that they're going to remember versus the steak they're going to forget about tomorrow, or the toy that in 5 minutes it's going to be broken, they're not going to remember. Rather maybe spend a day out in a park with your family, and it's cheaper than buying that toy. So creating experiences and balancing that entertainment aspect. Be very mindful with your spending. Think about your financial goals. Think what you really want. You don't think about the big picture. What do you want to accomplish? Do you want to have gorgeous sikha, or do you want to be able to have a nice sikha and make a nice simcha and be able to not be stressed? It's you could do all with proper planning. Just you got to be careful. If I spend too much on this, I'm not going to be able to spend enough on that. Regular savings, you have to make it a habit to save. I think in your one of the podcasts you gave, Lou, you mentioned about one of the original billionaires. If he wouldn't have saved his first dollar, he would have never saved his first. I'm sorry, if he wouldn't give his first dollar, he would have never given his first million. We have to, from day one, start saving. It has to be just as you put away for groceries, you have to put away for savings and investing in quality. Investing in quality is not necessarily investments in the market. Think about when you buy a pair of shoes, you buy a shoe in Payless for $30, it might rip in 3 weeks versus buying a shoe somewhere else that's a little bit more costly, but it's going to last you the season. Now, instead of buying two pairs of shoes for 30, which ends up being $60, you buy one solid shoe for 50. Maybe that upfront investment was a little bit more money, but long term, it's a much better product. So, but again, you have to take into account and use discounts, shop sales. Again, don't shop a sale when, I'm sorry? Don't shop a sale just because it's on
So
sale.
uh,
Yeah, Ravik Miller famous saying was he saved
right.
Black Friday 100% by not shopping. If you're buying it anyways, like Bingo has now a sale, no endorsement, but they're having now a special Yom Tov sale. Don't stock up on plates just because it's on sale. Make sure you have the money for it. And another big thing, don't be afraid to ask for a cash discount. I always ask for cash discounts. Obviously, not when I buy one plate, one package of plates, but when I buy clothing and I buy shoes, I always ask them, "Can I get a cash discount?" And you'll be surprised. A lot of store owners will tell you, "Yeah, no, here's 10% off," and that's a lot better than the 3% cash back on your credit card.
Right. I just want to add very quickly. So I know that when I buy suits for Yom Tov for my kids, which I just did recently, and it's exactly what I did. I walked in and I said, "Well, if I pay in cash," the guy gave me a discount and he saved me the taxes, and it was really nice. As
Yeah.
far as teaching the skill of budgeting, let's be clear. I'm going to mention it here. This will actually save us some time in a later slide, since you did such a good job moving into this topic, where I would actually sit with my kids and budget with them. And you can work so many positive skills with these kids, teach them teamwork, teach them
Mhm.
nurturing. All of a sudden, you have two siblings that were not getting along. They constant sibling rivalry, which is, by the way, healthy and normal and unavoidable. But you mediate it by all of a sudden you're working together. Wow, you're planning a chalamoid, and some families will have a family meeting and would encourage I encourage parents to take a step back and leave the family meeting up to the kids, and then have the kids come up with three options and then budget with them. And then if it's up to the parents, sometimes if you have a teenager, they can help you find discount codes or promo codes and
Mhm.
coupons. And it just takes the whole concept of budgeting and building family skills as a whole and just puts all of that on steroids, building another healthy, resilient family with siblings who are going at each other constantly on prior issues or prior conversations, all of a sudden
Nice.
working together. And what a great thing.
Very nice. Moving to the next slide. Thank you. Betuchen and Stadlis from
So,
Rabbi Biderman.
so this is a very famous question to always get. How do we tie in a minute into finances? So I heard this recently from our Biederman. Amina is the past. Whatever happened to me was for the best, and this is what Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to happen. Betuchen is for the future. This is exactly what Hashem wants should happen. So He wants I should lose a job, and I believe that's what's best for me. Hishtadlis is I know I'm going to lose a job, so I'm going to save an emergency fund for when that happens. So it's nicht going to that the min is again, it has happened. The tuchen is it's going to happen. Life is going to happen. Your boiler is going to break on you. You're going to have your washing machine is going to get a sock stuck in there and it's not going to drain. You have to call a technician down on the air of Yom Tov. It's going to happen when there's a lot going on. But the Stadlis is making a plan for when that happens. By the way, Victor Miller saw in the Chovos HaLevavos, he writes over there that when you budget, it's actually showing Hashem that you're believing in Him and sabatuchen that you gave me X amount of money, I'm going to live within that amount of money, not going to live above that. You want me to have this little, I'm going to live within this little. You want me to have this much, I'm going to enjoy this much and give just as much tzedakah. It says in Tehillim, Hashlach Hashem Yehoifchu v'chalchelechu layitain la'olam moit latzadik. The art school interprets it, cast on Hashem your burden, and He will sustain you. He will not allow ever the faltering for the righteous. If you trust in Hashem, He will take care of you. But trusting in Hashem means planning for when life, I call it when life happens, challenges that pop up in life. And Rabbi Lappin always talks about this again in his book. True happiness comes from purpose. True contentment comes from living with a purpose. You have a reason why you want to live. You're living with, you're very intentional with your money. You're content with the host hand. When happy, I don't have, okay, so I didn't have the couch today. I am driving a used car, so I didn't have the fanciest car lease. But guess what else I don't have? I didn't have the car payment. But guess what I'm going to have in the future? I'm going to have minichas and nefesh, and I'm content with what I have. And all these, you have to have a balanced approach to all these. You got to remember, balancing, you do need some needs, you need to take care of it, but be happy. Be content, be happy with what you have. And we can see in Shalim, the poorest people, they're the happiest people, right? Having stuff don't make you happy. True happiness, same thing, and show this to your kids. Okay, we're going to go to a Chalamoy trip. Let's go to the park. Let's spend time together, and instead of spending a lot of money.
One thing to just to prove the point that Chaim is saying, speaking to what we were discussing before about compulsive spending. Most people who do that, they're not happy. You see, like every 6 months, they're either renovating their house, they're changing cars, and even if they have it, but if they're not psychologically okay, or they themselves are not in content, as so you eloquently put it, so then it's there's no end. There are no boundaries, and it's just again a cycle that's full of distress, as we discussed earlier, and they keep falling into that negative trap of repeating over and over again, trying to get out of their insanity by spending all that money and by never being happy. So all of this is very relevant.
Very nice. So basically, what you're saying is that in the progression as we're continuing, we said we started out with all the negatives, then we divided between the positives, then we're going to the three targeted behaviors for healthy. Basically, you can spend it, save, or give, and then you say that a lot of healthy habits. If you're going to start making decisions, and if you're going to work on your instant gratification, and you're not going to do compulsive things, and you're going to be happy, content, and happy with what you have and what you need, all of this will lead to you having more savings instead of more spending.
Yeah.
Which leads
And
to
if
less
you have
stress.
a good betuchen is also less stress. Okay,
Less
I'm
stress.
looking
Now,
at
Gresses Simchas Yontif. Yeah, you're gonna have enjoy. Yontif is gonna be a real Simchas Yontif. You're gonna enjoy Yontif. Yeah, maybe you're not gonna have as much as the guy down the block, but you're gonna have a true Simchas Yontif. So the role of budgeting
right
and some
You'll have a
practical. Sorry.
tips for managing finances during the holidays. So go
So
on.
let's talk some
Number
practical
one.
tips that we could do and how budgeting is going to come in. First of all, the benefits of creating a budget is giving you financial stability, reduces your stress, and also demonstrates you being responsible with your money. You're showing Hashem, you could trust me with your money and you could give me more. I'm not going to be frivolous with it. It starts with having a
Okay,
good
be real for a second.
Yeah.
Be real for a second. And let's not talk about yearly budgeting. Speak specific. There's a
Speak for
tissue
Fiyantov,
coming.
right?
There's a
So
pipe.
Tisha can, right. So we need to buy
Okay.
shield seats. Maybe I buy in one shield instead of seven. Kaputas cost what it costs. Lilith, who says I need to buy a $500 esrik? I could find a kosher esrik in Bingo or even on 13th Avenue for a lot cheaper. It might take some time to look for it. Might take a little bit more work.
Be clear. Be clear. In other words, you say to a guy, look, one way to live is to have stress.
Right.
Because you have a budget, the tissue is coming, and
Mhm.
from the way you see it is you're going to need to spend $10,000 and you only have $5,000. So
Mhm.
one way is you say stress, oh, red alert, panic, all
Correct.
childhood, all negative stress. The
Right.
other way, what you're saying is you're looking at you're looking at contentment, and you're saying, okay, Rabid, has $5,000. By being realistic and writing down in great
Mhm.
detail everything that you have to spend on in Tishra
Mhm.
on an Excel sheet, on a Google
On a paper,
spreadsheet,
yellow pad.
on a paper, on a yellow pad. And you can say to the guy, look, when nobody's, besides Yom Tov spending with Mikhail Yozug and Luvi Alive and Yashalom, but we're not talking about that. We're talking to wissen, wie kann ich ja cotton or ich will,
Mhm.
aber du willst, ein Mensch kann sagen, nein, ich bin betuchen, also ich will tun, was ich will, but we're not going in that direction right now. We're saying somebody is not at that level of betuchen. You say, I have to see how I make all these expenses fit into $5,000
Victor Miller says
rather
that means
than
betuchen. That's
running,
exactly.
Chazali, was
The Victor Miller says that means having betuchen that you're going to live within that
by
$5,000 budget.
pushing, by backing into
Yeah.
the amount of money you have.
Correct.
This actually means betuchen. In other words,
Correct.
you're saying to Hashem, you're saying to God, Gott hat gegeben $5,000. Die kann sagen, hey Gott, you made a mistake. Ich darf 10,000. Oder kannst du sagen, hey, Gott weiß, was er tut, und gebe 5, lass mich heranbergen, all the perceived expenses
Correct.
fit into 5,000.
Correct. And by you having a budget, you'll be a lot less stressful because this is how much. Many people come to me and they have a budget and they're like, even if they're still in debt, I wasn't afraid my debit card is going to get declined when I went shopping for clothing. When I went to the grocery store, I wasn't scared. I'm not going to be able to write it down because guess what? I paid my bill. I have cash to pay my bill. So that's where the budget comes in because it tells you where your money is going to go. A budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. So you're telling your money before the month starts where you're going to spend.
Budget.
John Maxwell said that the budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went.
Yeah.
So before the month starts, you know how much you're going to spend on esrig. Your wife knows how much money she has to buy clothing and food. She's not going to be scared of a card getting declined or the grocery store guy telling her, I can't write down because you owe too much money because we have the money for it.
Right.
Right.
Very good.
So that's
Continue.
part of, and part of that is preparing your mindset for that, taking into account what's important, family minhagim, your personal growth, embracing simplicity by finding meaning in simpler stuff. Like I said, a couple of years ago, I worked in yeshiva, and there's a Rebbe there that lived on credit cards. He tells me, it was before Pesach, Chaim, the guy inside, die echte melech. I sit down by the side of the table, I'm a king. And he's like, you know why? You go to Kaddish, there's no bills left to pay. Everything is paid. You go to the Sida, you go to the Sided, you're good. I sit down at the table, Rosh Hashanah, I'm going to go to Rosh Hashanah to the table, I'm going to eat the apple. I have no bills waiting for me. Everything has been paid for. All the Yom Tov clothing that I have, all the food that we bought, it's been paid for. And I didn't have that stress, the bill is going to be coming because there's no bill coming. So when you budget.
So let me understand this. You guide people through RSK to go from wondering where the money went to understanding what their budget is,
Correct.
every detail, so they
Correct.
can be free of the financial stress. That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Did we cover? We have to move. It's 9:06.
So in budgeting
we
for
have
Yom
to
Tov, taking some stuff into account in creating your budget for Yom Tov, you have to take into account, travel, gifts, meals. Wie sich Chassidus macht. I personally think Tishrei is more expensive than Pesach. Make sure there's no surprises. Keep some buffer in there because 8 of 6 an hour before this money, your light is going to fall down. So make sure you keep some money in there to be able to there's last minute stuff. And best thing is start thinking about next year. Okay, Tishrei costed me this year X amount. For next year, I have to save X amount. It's a starting point to know how much to save for the coming year, and try to avoid those last minute. Try to avoid those last
separate presentation.
Yeah.
on how to make more money.
Well, a future day.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt, you'll be surprised.
I just want to jump in for a second. Budgeting, even though we're making it sound so complicated, but I think once family members get into the habit, and the best way to do it is to train your kids, and sometimes it's okay to budget together with the kids. I tell parents, don't tell the kids about all your financial expenses because you don't want to overburden them and then get them to worry about how you're going to make a living. That's not appropriate. But it is okay to show them like some of your maybe electric bills or phone bills and show them how you cover it and what you do to cover it. And don't give them an exact amount of money, maybe if they're younger children, about how much you make. But you can give them an idea, and you can show the difference between budgeting and effective budgeting, and show them how this can climb into their natural lifestyle in a way where they don't have to start taking all this apart later and avoiding debt from the get-go. Just wanted to throw
For example, I made the mitzvah. My son knew there's a budget. I didn't tell him the amount. And he wanted some stuff. And I told him it's going to come at the expense of other stuff. And as I got closer to the mitzvah, there's some other stuff he wanted. I'm sorry, we don't have the money for that anymore. It's not in the budget. So he doesn't know the numbers, but he knows there is a budget. Next slide.
Got it.
I wouldn't give him the number. I wouldn't give him all the numbers, but I would sometimes I would do with my own kids. Yeah. I would say the budget is $100. How you guys spend it, give me some options. We can sit down. I'm here to help you. I'm here to
like for a Chalamoy trip, that would be a fine thing to do. Yeah.
Correct.
So
yes, exactly. That's
some other tips to stay out of debt.
1 second. I want to jump in that for a second. Many times parents, we're all adults, over 40, be'erich, and there's so many things we learn in life the hard way. And ik ben een grote chusset for sharing with the kinder, this is what I'm going through now. Okay, you have to be smart about it, of course. But you're saying, okay, this is a challenge, and this is how I'm dealing with it, and this is the tool that I'm learning. I always say, a sales manager, and a coach, and I like to show to bucherimlich and to ingelatlich. See how I'm talking listen in how the 50-year-olds are talking, the 40-year-olds, the 30-year-olds. So you start to have the language, the issues. It's the same for everyone.
Right, Lou, I just wanted to jump in for a minute. Sorry. There are some people on the group that don't speak Yiddish.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so
I speak Yiddish? I didn't realize. Yeah. So Chaim,
yeah,
do the 2-second version of this slide, please.
So we'll try to do it in 2 seconds. It's a lot more because this requires some understanding. So when it comes to giving gifts, family might expect it. Instead of giving gifts, try to focus on non-materialistic joys. Like Dr. Gross had said, try to focus on experiences. Let's do stuff together. Let's reminisce about how it used to be in the past. Also, be
In
very
other
open.
words, in other words, and I'm going to cut it short because we're tight on time. In other words, instead of going to Six Flags and having to spend $100 per person, design a hike that costs zero per person.
Correct.
Next.
Correct. Also, if the family buys a gift for the parents, be very open and honest with your siblings and tell them, I budget. Next time, let me know in advance what it's going to cost. All right, stuff like that. Now, planning for after Yom Tov finances. Think, after Yom Tov, look back, how did you do for Yom Tov? Do whatever it takes not to go into debt for Yom Tov. Think, what can I push off? Where can I go for a meal to somebody else? It doesn't cost me as much. And try to, and if you do, Yom Tov is coming, and you have to make Yom Tov. If you do have to use debt, create a plan right away to get it out of debt as soon as possible, and it shouldn't continue happening. So next year, you don't have to go into debt. And at the same time, also, it's very important to recognize your progress. If you made progress, so this year we spent less than last year, we did a little bit better, even if it wasn't perfect, just recognize, hey, we were better than last year, and guess what? Next year, we're going to be even better.
Amazing. So after Yom Tov, you reflect, you make notes.
Yeah. And guess what? And if people around you, and if people around you don't understand that what it means to live on cash, you need to find new friends. You need people that are going to support you in your difficult choices. So here I have a case study.
I would love to do case studies. Nope. Next, make a spending plan. Go.
Right.
So
it's one of those things that if you surround yourself with good people and you surround yourself with people who do budget and you pick their brain, sometimes they can give you some really good idea. Just put it into your natural daily habits and
good. Is that the case study?
No. The case studies with two different families where one decided they're not borrowing by hook or by crook, and Hashem provided them a tremendous shefa. The other one was a family, it was a complicated situation. I'm not going to deny the facts there, but they had excuses for everything. And they wanted, obviously, everything to work out, but they weren't willing to make the tough decisions, and they are still struggling. So it's when you commit, I'm no longer borrowing, and whatever it takes for me not to borrow, and I'm going to be responsible. It's not only borrowing, it's being responsible with my money. Hashem is going to provide the shefa. You have to do your shtadlis. Leave the rest up to Hashem to do his part.
Is this Avtucha now?
Yes, Avtucha. We see it in our RSK all the time. People that take responsibility for their finances, the amount of shefa that comes in is tremendous. It's the famous Gemara that asked Thanuim, who provides for you? One pointed to the sky, another one pointed to the roof. The one that pointed to the roof said it was because his mother took him into Shield, and when he looked up in Shield, he looked up at the roof, at the ceiling. The other one pointed to the sky because he was an orphan from both his parents, and he lived on the street. So he knew his shefa comes from Hashem. When you take either which way, it's the same. It was both the same. When you show HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm responsible with money, he's going to provide you the shefa.
I see a different reason. Instead of making it a mystical reason, I know we're tight in time, but I see something else actually happening there. Instead of making it mystical, so what you're saying is that those who choose the stressful life by continuing the unhealthy habits and unnecessary spending, they remain in that.
Correct.
And lacking accountability. And lacking in accountability.
Lack accountability, lack betucha, whatever you'll call it. Right? Yeah, exactly. But again, this is mystical, but I like to keep it psychological. Like this, it's attainable, and I don't have to look at it. Ooh, is God loving me today? Am I? So I say, no. There is a way that most people could figure this out by doing the right thing. God trying like a system. Menschen do a system in der Welt, wo sie Sachen arbeiten. You fresh and you don't make exercise, you're gonna gain weight. Except
Dr. John Deloney recently said the same thing. He said success means creating a plan and working to make it happen. Success just doesn't happen. Every successful person created a plan and made it work.
Okay, yeah, Be'ez Hashem. What he's saying is, if you decide, okay, I'm not going to do that, there is a a natural way. Because got to triangle like the system. There's a natural way on how you can figure this out, on
It's
how
never
to
option A
find
and
a
B.
life that is not going to be stressful
Right.
anymore.
It's not
That's
option A and B. There's option A, B, C, D, E, and F. And when you decide that option A and B is not the only options, you'll start, it might take time, but you'll figure out the rest of the options.
right.
Some
And what you're saying
ideas,
is there's a blueprint.
correct,
RSK, Ramsey, there's a blueprint
correct.
on what you can do to follow.
It's create a
Again, some
plan.
people
A
do
budget is
make more
creating a,
money.
correct. It's create a plan. A budget is creating a plan. RSK is a place that could help you teach you how to create a budget because people struggle with that.
Got it.
Right. So
Good.
some ideas,
15, slide 15.
yeah, some ideas to alleviate the burden is making a spending plan. Call it a budget, call it a spending plan. It's basically tell your money where to go. It's going to reduce surprises. You're not going to get shocked. It's going to help you manage and prioritize what's important. Because, hey, I have so much money. What is important? Maybe this is not so important. Maybe this is going to wait. Also, it has to be comprehensive, meaning it's as you do the budget, and you see, hold on, this has to get you can adjust it. Okay, groceries costed more than I thought. Oh, more than I thought. Okay, what are we going to adjust to be a little bit less? Be conscious of Yom Tov needs more food. We travel. We give a lot more tzedakah. There's no perfect plan, and the plans might change. But if you have a plan, you're in control of it. Instead of wondering, instead of your money happening, you're telling your money what to do instead of it happened. So that's why it's important to have a spending plan.
Right. And there are a lot of people that live, they just say, hey, I'm just going to spend my money and hope for the best.
Correct.
And it's not responsible, and it just causes more debt.
Correct. Tuli, you want to take it from here?
Yes. So pretty much the divide and conquer is oftentimes families, they just don't know what to do, and they're spending money on things, I would call it simplicity, things that you can actually do. So right now there's, again, I'm not I don't want to knock any advertising that's going on. I'm just using it as an example that there are sukkah builders out there. So if somebody has a family full of teenagers that could bring your sukkah that you normally build for sukkahs, and you can bring it down from a storage, and you pick it up, and you have a couple of kids get together and bring it down and build it. So you don't have to spend $250 plus for these guys to come build it for you. So that's a very clear example of divide and conquer. And also there are chores of, let's say, waitering, or instead of Instacart is very big now, and all these apps that they have, very similar to that as well, where people shop for you, and they do charge you a premium. They don't realize they don't charge you the actual number.
Yeah, there's upcharge.
Correct. Of what it would cost you when you go to the store. There's always an upcharge when you use this app, and people don't realize it. And at the end of the day, your bill is much higher than anticipated, rather than going to yourself. So if you have younger kids, give them don't give them big bucks. But if you think they're responsible, especially if the stores are not too far, divide and conquer. That's the way to do it.
I have that with my kids. My son, every time he takes out the garbage, he gets $1 per bag. And it's a way for them. I didn't give an allowance. They want money, they have to earn it. I want them to understand in the United States, nothing's free. You work, you get paid. And then they learn, what to do with their money. Yeah.
It's also a way. So I have a different way. It's that both right. Your way is also right. So the way I do it is that when the kids bring home tests, for 90 and so on and so forth, give them money, and then they help budget it when they want to buy something, for instance, they want an MP3 player, so on and so forth. So they do it.
Right.
Oftentimes, when they want to plan a trip, now Chalamoid is coming up. It's a great time to talk about that for a minute. Is that believe it or not, there are plenty of venues that are advertising group discounts, cheaper rates, just because of the holidays. And it's amazing to get on board with that. You don't have to go somewhere that's not giving you sales. There's so many things you can do with that the family will enjoy, and they really will. It doesn't matter, children of all ages. And go for the promo codes, go for the coupons, and give them options. Let them come up, work together, collaborate. You're teaching such valuable skills to these clients.
It's teaching them communication as well.
Correct. Effective communication, keywords, and team building is really necessary. And keywords, brilliant. You're teaching their personality, despite the personality clashes in the past. But you're teaching them to actually bridge those gaps in a healthier, corrective way, which is really it's only going to complement them in their own role.
Amazing, both of you, and the examples that you mentioned for your own children. Okay, remedies to alleviating the burden. Okay, prioritize self-care. Go ahead.
Pretty much the idea of self-care is very important. A lot of working individuals.
One second. Now you're back on the psychological part. for those who have for those who have stress. So we're not talking about budgeting and finances anymore. We're going back to psychology. Go
Even with
ahead.
a budget, the creating a budget could be stressful.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right, but on the same note, creating a budget could minimize and alleviate the stress.
Correct. It's the actual creation that's stressful. It's once it's done, the stress gets eliminated.
That's correct. Excellent, excellent one. So the prioritizing self-care, I really felt that this was probably the most important piece of the entire presentation. You have a lot of working families, a lot of working people, working fathers, working mothers, especially the mothers oftentimes, is that they don't get a break. They're always busy with the kids. They're juggling their work. They're juggling the kids, especially if you have a family full of kids, and they start to neglect self-care. Now what happens then is that it could turn into a clinical anxiety, which means a distress versus a stress, like we discussed earlier. So now the group has a clarity about how this could turn into a distress, and because they don't have any time out for themselves, and the mother is human as well. So you have two options. If you have money and you can fit it into the budget, and the mother or father works a great job, or they have a business, and you can allow yourself, a time to go to a spa or to go to some sort of a really good venue that costs you a few dollars, but you could relax. I think it's totally worthwhile. But if not, there are other ways, there are other options. Don't think that there are not. You could take a bubble bath when the kids are not home. There could be some downtime. Ask dad to take care of the kids for a little bit. Tell dad to take the kids out. Tati can do a really good job oftentimes. And
I'll share what the Nachman says in two different places. When somebody has stress or dinam, we call it. I say when they talk about dinam, that's what they mean. Person has stress, distress, and all of that. And in one place, he says the guy should dance, which is shifting their body, and physiology, tanzen. And another is to sing a happy tune. So that's mashal of the two. You can be doing both of them. You do music and dancing. It changes the whole person.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
What you're actually speaking to is you're speaking to some of the remedies we do. You're touching on it. When what we do in crisis, we try to change the body's chemistry. That's actually what you just said.
Exactly.
It produces the endorphins.
Nachman says this. And Nachman was a big psychologist, heilige psychologist.
And I say this all the time. The rabbis knew exactly what they were doing and why they said it. There's no question. Correct.
I say a whole book with the Chucham for the Manishtanu writes about this and about that. It's one line in Uvas. The whole book, what he's trying to explain there. But anyway, we got it.
Right,
and the next thing is ask for help.
That's correct. And you know what? Guess what? It will release tension. And mommy gets a break. The kids get a break. The kids go out with Tati. And guess what? The kids love to go out with Tati. The kids love to spend time with Tati. If you're an average family, dad is usually at work and he's usually doing other things, and mom is home with the kids. So in addition to mom appreciating the break and getting some time to prioritize her self-care and doing things that she wants to do, or if you can find out for your wife, I'll tell you one of the things, I think there's a lot of men that are going to kill me for this, but it's okay. I'm willing to take the risk because the wives really do a lot of work in the home and they really deserve it. I do something personal for my wife. I didn't hear this from anybody. I came up with it on my own to put aside like something called a wife appreciation box, because I don't know what my wife wants. And a lot of men don't know what their wives want because we're wired differently. And if you think she's going to want something special for Yom Tov, make a special budget plan for your wife. And I always put at the end of every month, or sometimes depending on if something my wife did that was really amazing, I would always add money to that envelope. And like this, whatever you want to buy, these are your flowers, because my wife doesn't appreciate flowers every week. She's one of those. I'm sure she can shake hands with a lot of other women. I say all the women went to the same school, and it could definitely be appropriate for other women also to make this envelope and put money in an envelope anytime you want to show your appreciation.
Very nice.
Happy wife, happy life. She gets what she wants. She's budgeting towards something that she prioritizes with her own self-care, and it works. It definitely works.
Got it. Very nice idea. Okay, we're done here, or you still do the ask for help? Ask the husband for help, you're saying. What about therapy? What does it say? We provide therapy, coaching. What does that say? So
basically, if somebody starts to turn towards clinical distress, this is when you start asking professionals for help. If you can't cope on your own, or you can't come up with a solution on your own, finding somebody that find themselves in a never-ending cycle of distress, that would actually be a good time to seek out help. We provide sessions. We tailor very specific coping mechanisms to that very specific environment that the person's living. And we actually help them get better by helping them create for themselves more healthier corrective situations. So they actually feel better, they get better, alleviate a lot of the anxiety. And sometimes we use other family members around the house to help out, similar to the example that I just gave as well.
Got it. Very nice. And here we go. Okay. Everybody can see here the information. We also put it on the, it was a very nice presentation. Thank you guys. It was
Yeah,
beautiful.
we popped in the information in the chat. I
It is
popped in.
popped in.
Yeah, I popped in the information in the chat. Let's leave it for minutes so people could copy and paste it if they need to reach out to Dr. Gross. If they want to reach out to RSK, I put in the link where you can sign up directly to RSK. We were not sponsored by them, but I'm very grateful for them for giving me the tremendous opportunity to work with families and to give families the peace of mind that they need and deserve. I also put in my number, my email, if anybody has any questions for me or any comments, I'd appreciate it. We would like to do something like this again in the future, maybe on different topics and on different things to build on it to help Klal Yisrael. So all comments and suggestions are appreciated.
Very nice.
I'd just like to add
Thank
that.
you.
Is
Yeah.
there any questions on the chat or any questions from anybody?
No time. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to
Okay.
close it. And I want to thank you both. It was really nice to have to schmooze through these things. In so many times I was like, oh, I can go off on a tangent here in so many different areas and different directions, but I refrained because we had to cover everything. But it was good. It was good information. It was a full heck of the underlying psychological and then actual practical behaviors, side for spending, and then for budgeting, and then for psychological ways and how to for self-care and how to get better. Yeah, as I said, the only thing that's left out of here is how to earn more money for somebody who sees that as the biggest obstacle. But
you
also,
can't outspend your stupidity. You can't.
no. You can't,
We see it. People make more money, they spend more.
no.
So it's,
Well, but
but we
that's
should
another
talk
topic.
about that also. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
one other thing you touched on a couple of times is about how to parent the children in a way that they help and they understand budget and they earn in a certain way. And again, that's also a whole nother topic. And I just have to for now plead the fifth on that. And Sean, and that's it for now. And Tuli, thank you, Doctor. That was.
I just wanted to jump in and say that we really appreciated you and thank you
Yes.
for
Yeah, thank you.
helping.
Dr. Gross, thank you very much.
See you for everybody.
Thank you very much. And I should help us that we should all be stress-free. Always, not only for Yom Tov, always stress-free.
Positive stress, remember, positive
and an abundance
yes. We should be stress-free.
This stress-free. Yes. Very nice. Close the recording.
Take it.
Last question. So we did get a question from the email. If you want to touch on it, was directed to me. If you want to take a minute, Dr. Gross, we could discuss it, run through between the two of you, and give me your insight. So the question came in. There's a big elephant in the room when planning for Shabbos and Yom Tov. The spending, the concept of these expenses is part of not being from the limited resources Hashem gives somebody for the year. And there's a very generally understood to a certain extent that you can spend as much as you want for Yom Tov and for Shabbos, and it's not part of your yearly budget. How do we approach this together with finance, not with the actual aspect of budgeting, the non-spiritual aspect of budgeting, together with the rachamisdikait of Yom Tov, Shabbos? It is a spiritual thing. How do we compare these two? So my response to this is, it's a question I get all the time. People ask me this all the time, and my answer to this is, and this is the reference to the Gemara that they bring up, a Gemara Masechtas Baitza. It says, Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Lezer ben Rabbi Shimon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, V'unai Lavi Alai V'Kitchi Kedishos Hayom V'Amini Boy V'Ani Paraya. Rabbi Yochanan said, he attributed to Rabbi Lezer ben Rabbi Shimon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us, my children, borrow for me, declare the day a holy day, a sanctity of the day, and have faith in me, and I will repay the loan. So Hashem promises to cover the loan that you incur for buying Yom Tov stuff. The thing is, at the same time, there's another Gemara that says, Rabbi Kiva is quoted as saying, make your Shabbos like a secular day, a weekday, but don't become beholden. Don't borrow money from other people. Rather, buy the basics for Shabbos, make it like a weekday, plain dry bread and water. You shouldn't have to borrow money from other people. Even though Rabbi Kiva does say for the Seder, you should borrow money to have Dalit Kaisis. So, first of all, how do we put these two together? Here, Rabbi Kiva says not to borrow, and here the Gemara says, here that Rabbi Yochanan says you should borrow. So what, how do we put it together? There's another question that should be asked. What is included in the Shabbos expenses that Hashem promised? I know Satan Rebbe, the Divrei Yoel, in his Ovos, on Ovos, Mishnayos Ovos, he says, Pirkei Ovos, that this includes also buying tznius clothing and paying for Talmud Torah, paying for school tuition. You shouldn't have to worry, you shouldn't bargain, because Hashem gives an additional to that. So, what is included in this? Is it, do we borrow or don't we borrow? So to explain this, there's a Shulchan Aruch that says even if somebody somebody works for somebody, he's dependent on other people, and he has someone even his own, he still has to make an effort to be mechaber the Shabbos. The poskim say that you should make Shabbos a weekday. You should basically be careful what you spend on Shabbos. So you don't borrow. You don't come to other people. This is why a person should be careful throughout the week. You should budget to make sure that for Shabbos he has food. And this is based on what Ezra created. Made a takuna that you should put on nice clothing on Shabbos. You should already start on Thursday preparing for Shabbos. So we see that we do have to budget. We do have to prepare beginning of the week, for Shabbos. We do have to budget on that. I'm going to just going a couple more thoughts on this. Ramai Brandsdorfer Zatzal, who's a Dayan and Eidach Raidus Netzisruel, he writes that the mitzvah, the Gemara says to borrow money for Yom Tov is only for food and drinks. Nothing else. So it's not for clothing, it's not for magazines, it's not for nash. It's literally only for food and drinks, and even brings down a pusik from Nehemiah that says specifically food and drinks. It says from the name of Rabbi Yashiv, they bring down that it only includes Tzarcha Shabbos and not luxuries. So the same thing as Ramai Baumsdorfer says. The Urich HaShulchan brings down very clearly that it talks only about meat and wine. So we're talking about the basics for Shabbos. We see multiple times that it only includes the basics for Shabbos to borrow. So that means you have to cut out all extra expenses and you have to budget throughout the week. So for Shabbos, you can have. Now, the Mishnah Berurah writes also very clearly that whenever you buy for Shabbos, you should say, I'm buying this L'Kovat Shabbos. So it looks like from the Mishnah Berurah, if you don't express verbally, I'm buying this L'Kovat Shabbos, you're not going to get the bracha from Hashem, Vani Parayalach. Hashem promises to pay you back. So Ramalamed and Penina Halucha brings down, what if somebody finds himself before Yom Tov, he has a shortfall? It happened, let's say that he didn't get paid because, the way the budget runs, he didn't get paid, but he has the money, or a big business deal came up and he had to spend his money. He has a shortfall in cash. So what should he do? He said, this is when you can rely on what Hashem said, Vani Parayalach. It's for somebody who has the money. He budgets, he lives responsibly, he has the money. It just happened to be because of the way the payments work, the way he gets his paycheck, the cash is just not here. He is somebody that could borrow and rely on Hashem, on Hashem's promise, because he's not relying on a miracle. And again, in the end, at the same time, he has to make sure throughout the week that he's careful and budgets and tries to make sure he has the money. So there's another very important thing that we have to remember. It says in Yirmiyah, anybody that does not need to take tzedukah and takes, is not going to pass away until he's going to have to take tzedukah. Meaning, Yirmiyah Hanavi promises somebody takes tzedukah when he doesn't have to, will end up needing tzedukah. And at the same time, he adds, if somebody needs to take and he doesn't take, he gives a promise. He promises you're never going to have to, you're always going to have, and you're going to be able to give and you're going to be a giver. So we see from here that you have to do whatever is possible not to take from tzedukah, not to borrow, not to take from other people. At the same time, Mishnah Berurah passes, if somebody doesn't have money, he can't afford it, he should take tzedukah. So if you can't, you have no choice. Yom Tov is a Yom Tov, you have to take tzedukah. But at the same time, you have to do whatever you can. You have to budget and you have to live to be able to make Yom Tov. And the promise of HaKadosh Baruch, the promise of the Gemara, "V'ani parayalach," is only for somebody who is meticulous, he budgeted, and it just happened, the time of month just worked out in a way where he's not getting a paycheck, and, so and it's just a short cash flow. That's when you could borrow. What are your thoughts on that, Doctor?
From you, yes. What I got from you was that we have to spend responsibly, that you can't just, if it's not within your realm, or it's not realistic for you to get a lavish budget, for you to sit there and all of a sudden get a 10-course meal for Shabbos, which I know that there are people that do that, and
Right.
spend without the budgeting. So that's clearly irresponsible, and it's undermining the accountability factor. That just
Right.
family in debt, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much the religious side of it as well. From our end, it's called accountability, but I think from the religious side as well, it's very, very important to note that this is what Hashem meant. God pretty much tells us that don't be something that's not realistic. Do something realistic. Don't start if you're making a paycheck that's only $2,000 or $3,000 a month. Don't order food for Shabbos that's going to be $2,000.
Correct.
Within your range, within your budget, you have to come up with a realistic plan, and then you can easily live from one paycheck to the next, and then also find some time to budget and save, put some money on the side as well.
Correct. Is there any other? Yeah, amazing. There was one question in the chat. It's about bankruptcy. Please reach out to me via email. I posted it in the chat. It's not for today's conversation. I would gladly answer your question. You could call me even, and if I didn't answer, just leave me a voice message and I will get back to you.
I do provide free 15-minute consultations. If anybody has something, there are times when somebody calls and they have something simple, we could actually tackle it on the phone for a couple of minutes. So not every phone call has to follow up with a session. I always tell that clients. So
I actually got it. Yeah, thank you, Doctor. That's a great. Thanks for letting us know that you can do that free consultation. There is another question that came into me privately, anonymously. Just like we advise people to invest early because the benefits of being the length in the market, should we not encourage young couples to budget early? It's actually very, very important, and I think it's a shame that we don't have it a part of Chus and Kala classes. It should be a part teaching clients how to budget early. I'm lucky. I have a couple of clients that are mamashuna to Shina, and they are budgeting and taking responsibility in their financial life immediately. RSK is in the process of creating a special plan for young couples, for Chus and Kala couples, where it's not our full package. They didn't roll it out yet, but they are working on that. We were updated by that recently. So again, yeah, it's absolutely very important to tell young couples right away they should start living in a budget even before they get into a hole, even before they get married. It should start, even before you get married. As a single, as a bacher, and they get old as a young girl, when you go to work right away, the same concepts. You could enjoy, you could save, and you could give tzedakah.
Amazing, Chaim. Thank you very much.
I guess if there's no other questions, we'll leave it at that. There will be a recording. We will send it out. If you want it, feel free to email chaim@concepts, and I will make sure that you get the recording. And with that, everybody have a ksivach sima tova, a giddy bench to you. May this be a year full of prosperity in our physical life, and our emotional, mental health, and in our financial life as well.
Thank you, Chaim. Have a great night.
Kol tov.